Yo, I'm Jamie.
This is Reba.
And we are Code Orange, and you are watching More Core. Deeper Than Before is the intro to the record. It's kind of like opens up a lot of the themes and establishes some of the overarching concepts of the record, both sonically with like a couple motifs that continue to pop up throughout, and tie some things up from our past record Forever and even the record before that, I Am King. So it's just kind of an introduction to the journey you're about to take. Swallowing the Rabbit Hole is the first track on the record. As soon as we rewrote it, we knew it was going to be the first track. And similarly to the way the intro kind of opens the door for you, this kind of, like it's called, it kind of takes you down the rabbit hole. And thematically, it's kind of about accepting that you're going to have to take a journey of self-reflection, maybe looking through things about yourself that you don't necessarily like, and societal things that you don't, that we all partake in order to hopefully spit out the other end the way that you hope to be. So
yeah, and musically it's just it's the first song where we start introducing all the elements that then show their different colors throughout the album. But it's where we start bringing in the heavy guitars and mixing in that futuristic kind of guitars and electronic sound that we develop on later on. In Fear is definitely one of the songs where we started discovering the way we wanted to blend the glitchy electronic elements with the real, obviously heart of what we love about heavy music, which is it being like raw in a way, but emotionally just being hard, which I think a lot of times when you try to combine electronic elements, synthetic elements, and the real elements of metal, it can all kind of start sounding fake in a way. And so we kind of started figuring out the sound of it with this song. Thematically, it's kind of on this path. It's kind of talking about how we all are kind of live in fear of this new, I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but this real judgment culture where everything you've ever done, said, is easily pull-upable and can be used against you, sometimes for very good reason, and other times maybe not, and just where that kind of leaves your mindset of what seems accomplishable or doesn't, because you're kind of have this constant fog of of maybe not of worry, especially if you haven't done anything wrong, but just judgment, and that's a big theme on the record, is that noise that we're always hearing now. So You and You Alone, musically speaking, it's one of the most modern sounding songs I think on the record in terms of the riff style. We used newer technique for our band, which is kind of a back and forth of passing what started as maybe a kind of chaotic, simpler guitar riff and taking that into Ableton Live and looping and chopping it, and then bringing it back to the band and turning it again into a playable riff. And we just played with that kind of a technique and in the song. And it also is a song where we bring in kind of more of the ethereal elements of the band and electronics within the bridges of the song, and has just a really intense climax, which is classic Code Orange. It definitely it's like the first part on the record that Reba pops up and her voice starts cutting through and is to me like an opening of the passageway to that aspect of the record, the melodic aspect. And thematically, it just kind of deals with facing our own like bitterness and anger that's definitely driven a lot of stuff in the past that we've written, at least, just of whether it's our peers or musically what we're around, and feeling like there doesn't seem to be a lot to offer. And
and I feel like part of the journey of this record is to try to look at that so that hopefully, you know, we can put that aside and not let it dictate your mindset, you know? So, yeah. Who I Am is the first melodic song on the record. It's kind of this really weird, ethereal, pretty song, kind of caked in disgust, and it kind of becomes more twisted as the song goes on, which I think is pretty reflective, like lyrically. It's pretty much a song about stalking in the modern age and how we all kind of stalk each other, or at least from my perspective. And yeah.
Yeah, and just the way that it was created was kind of a different approach too, in terms of starting with more of samples, you know, and turning those samples into the structure and the layout of the song, and then kind of building with samples almost more in like a hip hop style production way, and adding guitars, you know, on top of that, but starting with that kind of like more of a beat feel, and then, you know, taking it from there, messing with it.
Cold Metal Place is kind of, to me, the embodiment of like the environment of the record, and the environment of almost like what I consider to be like the main character of the record. It's kind of like this almost like technological, industrial kind of like hellscape that this character is kind of birthed from. And thematically, it kind of deals with the constant, you know, and this is a big overarching theme on the record, but this kind of buzzing, whispering opinion that we all, you know, constantly carry around in our pockets, on our psyche, you know. So just in the way that the digital world is now, and how that kind of impacts your decision making and can mess obviously with your mental health pretty severely. So, and just like people discovering how, and we haven't even really seen the impact of that because it hasn't even existed long enough. So it kind of works like most of the songs. There's kind of a duality to it. There's almost like what I consider to be like a real world meaning, and then a story-ish function. So, and yeah,
it sets up to like kind of the dark, cold, frigid landscape of the record, and how, you know, it fits in with the way that the art was designed. And just musically, honestly, started as one of the more metal songs. I think we kind of really flipped that on its head and turned what maybe started as like a even, you know, Sepultura inspired riff, and took that and remade it in this electronic like 4D way, and just
it becomes very it's something, it blurs that line that we're trying to blur between the raw and hard and this weird digital element, and like when those things are shifting, it's hard to tell, you know. So that's just what she said. Sulfur Surrounding is like, this is a ballad in a lot of ways. It's kind of like our take on a ballad, and thematically, again, it kind of deals with like corrosive relationships and kind of being manipulative in friendships and relationships, even unintentionally, and how easy it is for people to kind of stick to each other and you know, corrode each other in a lot of ways. So, and musically, it's definitely a bit of a chance, I guess, we took, because it's really is like a full-on ballad, but, you know, the bridge has some really weird, almost like glitch elements, and there's hard parts. So it's very our style in a way, in which I think is it combines these different elements that obviously exist in other kinds of music, but are really rarely put together. So, and it's a big one for Reba too, like a big song singing wise.
Yeah, and I think too with that song we really tried to dig into getting some of our best guitar tones on the cleaner end, and we really dug into some influences and creating and making sure that all of the riffs really built up and had cadence and everything. And I think we finally were able to nail that with a song like this, and got the opportunity to really build on the melodies of the song.
The easy way is kind of like the bridge between the two halves of the record, and musically it's definitely leans more into the electronics and into like a kind of groove. It's definitely the closest thing I would say to something more quote unquote industrial, even just in terms of not just it being electronic, but it having this kind of like pulsing like beat. And it's one of the first songs I've like fully sang on like melodically. So we wanted to add that color to the palette as well, to give all the melodic songs different feels from each other. Because I think something we don't like is when a band has just maybe a lot of bands, that do hard stuff and melodic stuff, it's kind of like two tools. So we try to instead make every song, or even if we pair a couple songs in terms of musical vibe, have like completely different lanes, I think. And this song like totally lives on its own. It almost has it has like a futuristic, almost like video game type like guitar lead at the end. And
yeah, our guy Shade in the band really took this song, I think, to another level in the way that the techniques he used. And he's basically a master of Ableton and just sampling and synth obsessed. And I
Chris
think
Farina too,
Chris Farina, who played drums in Nine Inch Nails period, he helped a lot with helping us figure out how to layer all different kinds of drum sounds in a way that guitars still cut through and vocals cut through, and we were able to keep all these elements of what makes our band heavy and different, but also introduce these modern techniques of production.
The guitar like solo passage part of this song I think is really cool, because it has this like we basically took a sound from some hip hop records that we really liked, and like in the box like guitar stuff, and learned how to kind of recreate it and do it our own way, which we did for a lot of the leads on this record. And it has this like soaring, almost like rock feel, but it feels super digital, and that's kind of why I said like video game or something, because it takes up less space but more space, like in a way, because when you record something for real live with the amp, there's like it has a certain sound, and it takes up a certain amount of room. So the way that she did it came up with this whole chain of sounds that was like influenced by Mike Dean, like the producer, and so it was a cool thing for us to apply, I think. Yeah, Erasure Scan. Erasure Scan thematically is definitely one of the darkest songs on the record. It kind of deals with obviously a lot of the record is kind of about the mental impact of the digital world that we're in on people now, and this kind of deals with the mental health aspect of like school shootings and tragedies in that regard. And maybe I'm obviously I'm an idiot, but I looking into just like doing some psychological research and looking into what certain people think is the reason why people do stuff like this, and my take on maybe what I think, and just kind of that mindset, what leads to that mindset, and the impact that can have is having on society, obviously, and especially in America. There's like shootings like that every day, so it's kind of a sad part to film like that.
It's a super chaotic song, and I think that reflects with the chaos of the lyrics as well. It's like a different kind of thing. And our other guitar player, Dom, who joined the band, during when we were making Forever, I think he really kind of got his style through on this song too, with the like pinchy, like different kinds of techniques that he has accumulated from listening to metal his whole life. And we were able to pull that into this song and glitch it and make it like a full-on intense chaotic Code Orange track.
The end of the song has a really cool like rhythmic glitch that's like a glitch, but it has like it's a total own meter, like we can play it in the room live even though it's like a loop. So I thought that was really cool too. Last One's Left's probably the song with the most like classic, I guess, from us, whatever, like bravado. Just it's kind of pretty, you get what you see, which is it's kind of letting out that feeling that, a lot of the, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it like moral code or the due paying aspect that I actually think is really important about heavy music and hardcore and metal. It's kind of like, because of, the way that everything's processed now so quick, it's kind of like going out the window in certain, not on like a super underground level, but with just kind of like the way you see a lot of things popping up and they feel like very engineered, whatever you want to say, corporately or something. So it's kind of, again, a lot of the record is about attempting to deal with those kind of things, but not, I didn't want the whole record to become about stuff like that, because, it can happen. A lot of our last records about stuff like that. And I think this is about kind of processing that stuff in order to spit out the other side. So it was important to kind of go on that.
I do think too, it's a super empowering song, even if, we wrote it from our perspective, anyone could take it empowering to themselves. And also was, originally kind of just an ass beater song, if I'm being honest. But at the same time too, we kind of twisted it, and we took what was originally like, a bass guitar, like kind of insane rhythmic verse, and just handed that off to Shade, and he replaced everything with these crazy room tom sounds and all this extra stuff. And something we originally started off with really is just like a power song, and
it's like a hard like festival stomping song put through like our insane grinder, just because we literally can't like get through a song without making it completely psychotic. So it started off just being like the simplest song on the record, and it is still, honestly, but because we just like hard, simple shit also. But then, it became, then once Shade gets it and stuff, it starts to go down this hole that it went down. So whatever. Yeah, Autumn and Carbine, Reba wrote a lot of that song musically. And I think thematically, lyrically, it's about kind of watching artists in other genres of music kind of pop up and be propped up by people who have money or promote them to live a certain kind of lifestyle, and that lifestyle ends up whether ending really badly for them, as we've seen in a lot of cases. And it's kind of like almost like a little bit of like an open letter to the people who are propping those people up corporately and encouraging them to be as loud as possible, because it's ends up with a lot of hardship for them, and they're not really being treated as people, more just like toys for the moment, try to get paid, which has always been a thing, not only in music but everything. So it kind of makes a lot of sense in the arc of the record as well.
Yeah, I think this song was a chance to have one of our first more rock sounding straightforward guitar riffs, but also just underneath it, it's super pissed and super angsty and tense. And we were able to really have that smooth but very clear feeling throughout the entire song. And I was able to really dig into getting one specific kind of sound on the guitars and the bass and have everything gel together in a way that we don't always do, because there is a lot going on a lot of these songs and electronically. But I think with this one, we took a little bit of a different approach to how we wanted to get that pissed off kind of angsty expression through it.
And electronically, the layering wise, we almost went a little more classic with it. It's definitely like very like Typo Negative inspired, and almost like there's like a keyboard sound on the bridge. It's pretty much just like a tribute. It's not even inspired. It's like kind of meant to bring that feeling. And a lot of times when we go on this record, we kind of tried to push forward with the electronic aspect, but I think on this one we kind of let it be more what it was. And it's like a stomping, like Alice in Chains Typo Negative style song that has our little twist on it. So Back Inside the Glass is definitely one of the more, I guess, like hardcore bass tracks, and it's like really mixes the electronics with the hardcore element. In I want to say straightforward, but there's really nothing on this that's like straightforward at all. But it's chaotic and just hard and mean, and it's kind of about trying to redesign yourself, but having this kind of like parasite, like a sickness that's inside of you that's kind of screaming for hate, that wants to bring you back, and it wants you want to get out, and open that door, but it keeps bringing you back. So
yeah, I think it's one of the most grimy songs on this record, in the way that we have a lot of stuff like that. It's just influenced, honestly, like riff wise, by our other songs. And it's like the mindset I was in when I was writing some of these riffs, and when we were working on the song, I know we kind of felt like we needed a song that represented that side of us, just that chaotic, really grimy, muddy type of song.
And it's just something that is quick and hits hard and is is like intense, you know, and like we don't really do things super randomly, you know. It's not like, oh well, let's just jam, and it's like it's just we don't do that shit like at all. So it's kind of like we want a certain kind of song, and sometimes it's not like that. Like she'll just come up with something and it'll be awesome. We'll follow that path. But like I think that this song was like we want this kind of song, and I like will write out a almost like more visual like description of what I want it to feel, and then we base it off that. So this was one of those for sure. Yeah, Sliver is it's kind of like the passage to the end, you know, the spit out ending of the record, and like the end of this kind of journey. And it's about just feeling like very unheard in a world that's where you have more of a platform to speak than ever, but everyone's just kind of speaking and yelling, and it's not really, there's really no one, everyone's pretty much smaller than ever. And at the same time, how quickly, you know, we were talking about earlier on the record, like tragedy and these things we can see on our phones that are so horrible, or see in real life, these, if God forbid, you know, this horrible stuff, and how quickly though now that sliver of time's getting smaller that anyone really cares before it's on to just like the next thing. And that kind of mourning process is smaller and smaller, and like the impact that has on you mentally. So, you know, as a culture. So yeah, Underneath is the last song on the record, and its intention has kind of changed in a way because it became the first single, but originally it was, and when we made it, it's kind of like meant to be like the cathartic ending of the record. It doesn't really have like necessarily an answer, but it's kind of like processing what you've, this character or yourself's, you know, journey, and trying to make sense of it and make decision about what kind of person you're going to be, I guess. So, and then musically, it was something that started with Shade and I, and then we kind of, the guitar element came after the fact, and it's very much like some of our songs are extremely, the riffs, and you can obviously tell, are like Reba and Dom getting really intricate on just riffing and trying to come up with the best riff. And some stuff is like this, it's almost like mouth riffs. It's like we just had this little guitar bending thing that I thought was like really catchy that I would sing out, and we recreated it, and it's simple in that kind of way, but it kind of suits the song's layering.
Yeah, I feel like we do usually approach things kind of like with the guitar as its basis. With this song and with a couple more of the songs on the album, it was more about, you know, the underlying chord, the underlying melody that was more open. And then, you know, the other instruments and the other percussive aspects, guitars included, as more of a percussive aspect. And this was just like additional ear candy almost, until, you know, we throw in obviously an insanely heavy pit in the middle of it because we had to. But it was a cool way to create a song. We wanted to, that heavy part's in there, I think, just because we really like, especially when Shade and I were first coming up, that we wanted it to be like a blend, because we saw, I don't really like songs being, there's a couple on this record that kind of stay in their lane the whole time, but I like to take it out of the lane because I feel like that's why we have a style, and that's what we're developing is a very specific style that can be, you know, related back to us. So, and that's part of our style. And sometimes to people it sounds random or whatever, but I don't really think anything on the record is random. It's very organized and calculated. So that's how I see it. But